Alright, quick question, quick answer. You got splotchy stuff on your mesh and you're not sure why, and along with that, perhaps maybe you might have really low poly shadows with a fairly high poly mesh. And you're not sure why, but it keeps happening. The quickest thing you can do is simply double click your mesh right here. This will open. Go down to support ray tracing, set fallback target to % triangles, and only, don't touch any of this because I don't remember what these values were and I fucked up. Go to fallback target %, set that to 50 to 100. If you do that, you'll notice that this disappears and it fixes two things. It fixes the bullshit splotch and it fixes the low poly shadows. Now, you might have another issue. If you're making a space scene or something that requires super distant shadows, and for some reason it's not happening, and you're trying to fuck with the scales, but for some reason the shadow disappears after a certain distance. To fix that, again, double click your mesh, go here, all the way up, set this to 5,000 or anywhere in between 1,000. Just increase the bounds, both positive and negative, on X, Y, and Z. If you do that, save, you'll notice that your shadow extends further. That's simply it. Now to why this works, it goes on a deeper explanation. So the entire video of how to fix it, completely done. Now, why this happens. The reason it happens is because nanite and lumen or anything ray tracing don't get along well if you don't know what you're doing. So, for example, let me go back and reset everything back to the original values. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so we got this bullshit again. The reason this happens is because the mesh uses two versions with nanite. If you're not using nanite, this won't be a problem. However, with nanite, it becomes a problem. So, again, you got splotchy issues and pixelated shadow, but your mesh is super high poly, as seen here. If you go to click your object, go to nanite, or just nan, you'll see disallow nanite. If I click this, you'll see it gets really low poly. If you don't see it yet, here's a better look. Here's what it looked like before, the super high poly bullshit that it was. If you disallow, you notice that it does this. And this is what the sun, holy shit, that's close, is casting. You'll see that it's casting the low poly shadow, even though if you reallow, it doesn't do it for the shadow. And why this happens, it's a little hard for me to explain. It's simple, but I'm just bad at explaining. Shadows for this polygon bullshit act weird. So I'll just show you an example. If I reallow nanite, in fact, there we go. Fuck it. Oh, that's even worse. So we'll use this little point as an example. You can see this is where the bounds connect, just in case compression's bullshit. Here's max valued. So you can see this is a point. I think this is called an edge. Yeah, edges. If you see that the edge here connects, if I reallow nanite, let me turn that off. Reallow nanite, you'll see the splotch happens here too. Okay, I forgot to mention as I'm editing this, a better way of explaining it so you don't have to watch the rest of that. The reason this happens is because nanite likes to shade off of your smooth mesh, and this gets worse the higher the polygon count. The lower the polygon, the less it happens, but it's still there. You can see from before, if I disallow nanite, you can see how it performs. This is the splotching that I was talking about. This is visualized in form, so you can see this is where the point was before. This is where the black was. This is how it's shading. ray tracing tries to shade off of your smoother mesh while keeping the quality of the low poly mesh. So the best way I could explain it was that this is a pretty visualized way of explaining it, honestly. It tries to shade off of your smooth globe or any mesh that has a curve or anything really with the low poly version, and the low poly version creates those black splotches because it's overlapping the actual mesh, creating shadows that shouldn't exist. That's the best way I can explain it visually. Now, onto another thing. The shadow. If I go back to here, disable lumen because that's gonna kind of fuck with it. If you're using lumen shadows, it could help, but I'm using point lights because lumen doesn't reach that far. You'll notice that, like I said before, shadows disappear. I've redone this video multiple times, so I don't know if I explained this or in a previous one or this one, but the reason this happens is because the positive and negative bounds act like a square or circle. It depends on how you want to visualize it around the mesh. So if I set it to 0, like I said, the mesh usually disappears, or the invisible box lasts around right here before it disappears, or the shadow disappears. But if you increase the positive and negative bounds, it increases that box even larger. So as long as your camera, think of it like this, as long as your camera's inside that box, the shadow renders. If your camera's outside of that box, like here, the shadow will not render. But if I go back, set it to, I don't know, 10,000, ridiculous number, but it's possible. So if I do that, you can see now suddenly the shadow's there, and I can go even further back. Those were my fixes. I hope this helped. Same thing, like I said, it fixes with lumen, blah, blah, blah. Have a good one. I don't know how to end this.